Hi, everybody. Welcome to KloudLearn's webinar on LMS reporting and analytics. My name is Prashant, and I will be conducting the webinar along with my colleague Jaspreet. Hi, Jaspreet. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Prashant.
Yes, guys, the topic of today's discussion is on analytics and reporting and the importance of analytics and reporting in the learning and development space. The modern workplace, as we know, is getting extremely competitive and demanding day by day. Advancements in technology and increasing automation in business process has made it imperative for employees to constantly upskill and reskill themselves. Now, for example, a lot of new skill sets like data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, just the trajectory that marketing has taken with SEO, with technical SEO, all these are new skills compared to about 15 years back, right? Even just by that train of thought, if you do think how skill sets will change in the next 10 years, it's going to be pretty dramatic, right? Keeping that in mind, the need to constantly upskill and reskill yourself is extremely crucial, right? Just going back to what I was talking about, organizations need to constantly have newer and innovative approaches to train their workforce in order to achieve business sustainability and long-term growth, right? And to do that, employers need to embrace a continuous learning culture, while organizations need to also offer engaging learning and development that is modern and effective. So again, in a learning management system is not only something that is important, but is a bare necessity for any company looking to train their staff on a regular basis. So yeah, why don't you take it ahead, Jaspreet?
Yeah, Prashant. According to market research future, the global learning analytics market is set to grow by 26% by 2023, propelled by the explosion of smartphone usage across the globe. There's a definite need for organizations today, especially for the L&D teams, to understand if the workforce is effectively engaging with the training programs or whether any specific skill training is required to drive the business growth. All the answers lie in the LMS with built-in reporting and analytics tools.
Exactly, right? So why don't we, transition on to our first slide that talks about why analytics and reporting are so important in training and development, and why having a reporting feature and even an effective reporting feature is crucial for any learning management system, right? So now, if you look at the first thing with training and development, right, is that to set effective training and development goals. Now, most organizations have extremely clear-cut goals with respect to their sales teams, right? You probably have heard of organizations having weekly or even monthly pipeline meetings where they review the progress of sales teams. Most marketing teams also have some degree of data that they strive towards. Business process teams, of course, have their KPIs laid out for them. However, sometimes with training and development, goals can be relatively ambiguous, right? And that's not good. You want to have clear-cut training and development goals right from the get-go. So adding on to this, you have to initially have a strategy that defines the future, where you have goals, where your goals are smart goals. That means they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound, right? The second step of of this process is to find gaps. You want to be clear, right, on what your training need analysis is. That is, what skill sets your employees possess currently, and where you want to go, right? So only when you know that these gaps exist and what these gaps are, can you create training courses that effectively address these gaps, right? Once you have both these things in place, you can have clear cut quantitative as well as qualitative goals. Again, obviously that these quantitative and qualitative goals are time bound, and yes, and when you do have these goals set up, it is easier for the training and development teams to tailor your course curriculum to match these goals, right? Now you have a whole host of other factors that you have to keep in mind in addition to just doing this. Like, you want to be sure that your employees, you want that what their background is with technology, and just how they like to uptake this information. For example, if you have a workforce that has primarily been interacting with instructors in primarily in classroom settings, jumping on directly to very technical mobile learning course might be rather challenging. So you want to basically make sure that you are aware of of three main factors. That is your employees, what their background with training is, their skill gaps, as well as your training course and your training curriculum. You want to make sure that all three are in sync, just so that it leads to efficient uptake of information, right? Now, once you have all that in place, it is imperative to ensure that training is not just a one-off scenario, right? So again, we all are very well aware of how training used to just be a biannual seminar that was conducted in a fancy resort where you'd have all of your colleagues join, where it's not, you have very less training but a lot more networking and a lot more of quote unquote an offsite happening. However, you want to ensure that in the modern world, right, just emphasizing on what I spoke about earlier with the importance of upskilling and reskilling, you want to ensure that you offer continuous learning, right? So you want to ensure that your training has a lasting impact on achieving your goals, which translate into improving business process, right? So you want to ensure that your training is not just theoretical, but is very practical, and that all your training not translates into quantifiable metrics that improve performance across the floor. Um, so yeah, and
Right, Prashant.
yeah. So, Jaspreet, you want to talk about how measuring and repeating this is extremely important?
Yeah, Prashant. So, measuring the return on training investment involves a number of criteria like training completion rates, learner feedback, performance in training. We can take a measurement a step further by returning to those smart business goals, which are measurable as well as achievable, to align with the employee performance objectives.
Absolutely. So analytics aren't limited to workflows with quantitative impacts anymore. Businesses across the board, like I said, are focused on implementing analytics. Have already implemented analytics in areas such as sales, marketing, your business process, so on and so forth. And that being said, it is crucial that even the training and development space has these goals. And we will talk further about how the reporting features in analytics will be used to measure these goals. But first, right, these are just again broad topics that we're covering with respect to goal setting, with respect to training and development. Why don't we take it a step further and look at some key training metrics, right, that are specific to training and development, and how these metrics can be measured. So let me progress on to the next slide. Right. So, important training metrics, right? So, as we know, metrics have been a huge buzzword in most education circles, and again, there's a very good reason for that. Um, so, a few learning metrics that educators can track have a huge impact on how learning experiences are measured, and what exactly these metrics translate to. So let me cover, right, a few important metrics in learning and development that you as a human resource head or a L&D manager can keep track of. These measures are mostly, you know, you can analyze these metrics mostly through reports in your learning management system. But there could be certain other ways that you keep track of these metrics. Jaspreet, do you want to talk about the first metrics? That's learner progress and course completion rates.
Yeah, Prashant, sure. So, the first metric that is very crucial when it comes to measuring the employee training is the learner progress and the completion rates. We need to figure out if our corporate learners are actually completing the online training modules and activities on time, if they are progressing according to our plan, or they need to offer them supplemental online resources in order to improve their comprehension and knowledge retention. So these all are questions that can easily be extracted from our learning management system. Learner progress and completion rate LMS report allows us to monitor individual performance so that you can intervene when necessary. Likewise, they are able to identify your top performance who may serve as great mentors for those who are struggling.
Great. So yes, just adding on to that, right? So your learner progress and completion rates are your bread and butter metrics.
Yeah.
Like you rightly said, you can these are metrics that help you zero in on important training courses. Again, learners across your organization and how their performance directly ties down into their training courses. However, even though this metric is an important metric, there are a few other metrics that are equally important and will help training and development managers not only assess individual learner performance, but also change how the training curriculum is created. Now, one such metric is the learner participation and engagement rates, right? So corporate learners must actively participate in order to get full benefit from from their online training courses. We already know that we know that one of the biggest challenges in the learning development space is improving engagement, right? So one of the most effective ways to determine if your training course and your training curriculum is successful is by analyzing your participation rates and engagement rates, right? So these two metrics offer extremely important information on how your learners engage with their courses, right? So, for example, if your learner engagement rates are low, you know that there is something with your training courses and them not being engaging enough, right? Maybe your courses are extremely outdated and heavily textual, right? In that case, you might want to bring in more multimedia content in the form of videos, infographics. You might want to bring in certain elements, certain innovative approaches like gamification and social learning to break the monotony of learning, right? So we all know that most individuals who work a corporate job, one of the reasons why they don't engage with training is the lack of time, right? That is cited as one of the most critical factors in low engagement rates. Now, if you do want to basically ensure that your learners circumvent this hurdle, you want to ensure that your content is something that doesn't drain them further, but invigorates them, is engaging for them, and they learn something, right? Even if it's short bits of learning. Now, micro learning is a great way to improve engagement. So, what is micro learning? It's basically breaking down a complex topic into small bite-sized chunks. For example, let's say you have a sales team that's onboarded, right? You have a 9 hour shift. It's going to be hard for like your average salesperson to keep upskilling himself, right? Because he again, most people think that they know everything, right? Or at least like after school is very less. It's a minority group of people that actually constantly learn new skills, read books on subjects that they work in, right? And constantly sort of upskill themselves and reskill themselves, so on and so forth. So going back to example of a new sales team, right? In a 9 hour shift, it's going to be pretty hard for them to you know learn new sales techniques, learn new ways to maybe craft email templates, so on and so forth, right? So if you have micro lessons in your LMS, right? So which again, just very short lessons that span from about 2 minutes to 4 minutes. They could even be video lessons, right? They could even be curated content from a lot of thought leaders online, a lot of sales leaders online that just talk about certain fundamental maybe sales techniques, or a few things, right? They could directly inject into their maybe email templates, directly implement into their email templates. What that would do is it could help them apply whatever that they learn theoretically immediately on the job, right? And it circumvents the whole engagement challenge, because it's again very short bite-sized bits of content that are learned by them and that they use, right? If you gamify this process, even better, right? So if you have, say, points, badges, certificates that you assign these learners for engaging with these micro lessons, it makes the process fun, right? So you have just throwing a couple of examples out there. HubSpot, for example, does a phenomenal job of this. If you sign up for any of their courses, most of the sub micro lessons under them are on an average of maybe 4 to maximum 7 minutes in length, and all of them comprise of engaging videos. You also have quizzes and assessments at the end of these lessons that make it fun for the learner. So it's like you learn something, then at the end of it, you are assessed from it. Therefore your participation engagement rates go up directly. So yeah, so just to add, just to summarize, learner participation rates and engagement rates are important for you to know how your training courses are sort of performing in the eyes of your learners, and you want to basically use this information to make your courses a lot different than they are. So yeah, Jaspreet, we've covered two important metrics, that is learner progress and completion rates, as well as learner participation and engagement rates. Why don't,
Yes, Prashant.
why don't we move on to a third metric, again, which is a very staple metric, right? It's a metric that all of us are familiar with right from school, which is your assessment results, your training assessment results. So
Yes. Yes. So online assessment results are one of the direct indicators of learner progress and performance. This is particularly true if you conduct pre-assessments that create a benchmark enabling you to monitor specific skills or knowledge gaps as corporate learners complete their online training activities and modules. For example, a corporate learner scores low on their interpersonal skill exams at the beginning, but by the end, the online training course, they have increased their proficiency in this area and bridged their knowledge gap. This indicates that the online training course effectively conveyed the information and achieved the desired outcome.
Uh, great. Okay. So that's, yes, your assessment results, like you said, are imperative, right? Your scores, grades are imperative. Now, again, in situations like compliance situations, they become that much more important. So, I mean, this is again a no-brainer, but the assessment results, key metric, it has to be studied, it has to be analyzed, right? Moving on to another metric that is often sort of forgotten or pushed to the back burner is your course overview reports or your course overview metrics, right? All that means is that you have a complete picture of your employees' progress and performance across a particular training course, right? So, as a result, you have the opportunity to make changes, to identify areas of improvement, as well as the strengths of your online course design. This is again very similar to the learner participation and engagement report. They share a couple of similarities. So, for instance, course overview reports might reveal that 70% of your employees are unable to pass, say, a compliance certification, right? Thus, this is no longer an issue that maybe one or two individuals are struggling with, but instead a large or more widespread problem in your organization, which again has to be addressed in a timely manner to prevent any glaring mishaps or errors from a compliance perspective. Yes, and finally another metric, right, which is a very, again, it is an important metric, and you can have a direct ways to find this metric from your learners, and that is your learner satisfaction and satisfaction levels, right? And one way or a couple of ways to find out how satisfied your learners are through online surveys, questionnaires, polls. You could also go back to an old school style of finding out your learner satisfaction rates, and that's through one-on-one sessions. So for example, let's say that you find out that like a particular group of your learners aren't again interacting or engaging with the course. You can always have you know um, survey sent out to them, right? Where again, anonymous surveys where you don't have people mentioning their names, but they can just give feedback on areas that maybe the course lacks in. The course is unengaging, monotonous, heavily textual, right? They could always just pop in their comments, mention that that this course needs a little bit of more color, a little bit more life injected to it, and your L&D heads can take stock of this and make changes to training courses. So your learner satisfaction ratings are an important metric in improving your training and development, ensuring your learners are happy, and ensuring that continuous sustainable learning is enforced within your organization. Any other thoughts you'd like to add, Jaspreet, with respect to this?
Yes, according to me, the time log is another important metric that we should measure in the trainings. So basically, time log LMS reports offer insights into how long it takes for the corporate learners to complete each online training module or activity. So this directly helps us to determine which aspects of the online training course your employees are struggling with and what we can do to make them complete the trainings. So, for example, The time logs reveal that corporate learners are taking much more longer than expected to complete an online simulation. This is usually a telltale sign that they either aren't motivated enough or lack the necessary skills or information. As a result, you may have to incorporate more real world online training activities to build their experience and knowledge base. So, this will also increase their motivation because they are able to form a deeper connection with the subject matter.
Very interesting, Jaspreet. And just to add to that, right? It sounds like they're very similar metrics, like your time logs and your learner participation engagement rates. However, they aren't. So if
Yeah.
you have a high degree of participation rates and engagement rate, that's a positive thing. But let's say your time logs for your assessments show that your learners either have an extremely minimal time for a particular test or extremely long, like they're probably not able to finish their test and they're overshooting their time limit with answering maybe very less questions. That means a few of those scenarios, like you mentioned, which is they either are ill equipped with necessary resources, they don't have any knowledge of that particular training course, or that the quiz or assessment is extremely challenging, right? So it could be any one of those things, and it is imperative and important for a training and development head or L&D manager to pay attention to these signs and make changes to the training curriculum. So yeah, I think we've covered a couple of these important metrics. Why don't we move on with our webinar and look at some other interesting stuff. Right. So we are going to be talking about actionable and vanity metrics. Jaspreet, do you want to take this forward and maybe just explain to us what the difference is?
Yep, sure. Actionable metrics are basically the statistics that link to specific tasks that you can improve on and to stats that you can tie in the goals of your business. Now, if a metric isn't actionable and you can't do anything to make it better, then why are you tracking it, right? So the number of visitors, subscribers, followers are often meaningless according to some. But before giving you examples of beneficial e-learning metrics you can measure, it's important to go over what types of metrics you shouldn't bother with. Generally, metrics that are designed as vanity metrics exist only for superficial reasons and they are not worth measuring. Whereas vanity metrics, they are the statistics that look good on paper, but don't really mean anything important. Vanity metrics show their efforts are making a difference, but you don't know what the difference is.
Very interesting. So, from what I understand from what you said, are these stats are just stats that your reports or your LMS pulls out, but there's not really any actionable task that you can proceed with this metric, right? So just again, like we were talking about earlier, it has been the hype analytics and reporting, though it's important. A lot of organizations, a lot of companies, a lot of um, technology providers you work with through a lot of stats, but how many of those stats are actually actionable? How many of those stats are you actually measuring and taking some tangible action on? So that goes on to the next portion of this is what are actionable metrics, right? So statistics that link to specific tasks that you can improve and tie on to your business growth, right? If a metric isn't actionable, if a particular dashboard looks pretty, it has a lot of filters, it has a lot of like nice looking graphs, right? That's meaningless because apart from it just being cosmetic, sort of um, cosmetic display, what is it helping you to actually improve your bottom line on, right? So before giving you some examples of e-learning metrics that we sort of put into both these buckets, that's vanity metrics and actionable metrics, let's look at a few metrics that we think are vanity metrics. So the number of course completions could be a vanity metric. Remember, just because a particular percentage of students pass or complete a course doesn't indicate how effective that course is, right? Whether or not the students will actually retain any of the information. Again, we're not saying that course completion is something that you don't consider, but it sort of leans on the side of it being more vanity metric as opposed to an actionable metric. So this is in complete opposition to time spent, right? So time spent answering questions like what we discussed earlier is a useful metric. So for example, if 67% of students spend a disproportionate amount of time on a question, right? 67, that's a big majority, and 58% get that question wrong, right? that's an indicator that that question can be rephrased or removed. Again, when you increase this for not just a particular question, but the assessment as a whole, you do see how again how large scale improvements can be done to that particular assessment or that test, right? So now, going back, uh, why don't we again just quickly cover a few important metrics? So, time spent on assessments, like we discussed earlier, like Jaspreet mentioned with time logs, important, actionable metric, right? Learner interactions, right? Having a forum either hosted on your corporate portal or even LMSs. For example, KloudLearn has a social learning feature, right? Where we encourage peer-to-peer learning, right? Where it's a discussion forum of sorts where your administrators can pose questions, pose interesting tidbits where learners can interact with one another. You can like, comment, share. You could also have information from the internet that you could include. Now, going back to an example of the sales training group, let's say that in your particular group, right, you have a couple of subject matter experts. Now, in that sales group, it could be nothing but just more experienced salespeople, and let's say that they subscribe to a particular sales trainer online. So, for example, Jordan Belfort, right, from the Wolf of Wall Street, that like we all know, has a pretty interesting YouTube channel. Again, called Jordan Belfort, and he has some great sales training content that he posts on there. Now, let's say that you see this interesting video that he has on sales training on the importance of how to craft an engaging sales pitch, and you post that video. Let's say that you have a lot of your learners who engage with that video in the sense of upvoting that content, commenting on that content. You know that engagement with that particular piece of training content is high. That means that even though again, this could be a little more qualitative than quantitative, but you do know that your learners actually like your training content and are progressing towards their training goals. So yeah, just why don't we tie this together, and why don't you just talk about a few relevant L&D metrics that we should focus on, and wade through the clutter and just focus on what's important.
Yeah. So the relevant L&D metrics are, some of them are volume and delivery time for training material, employee satisfaction with the training program, their knowledge and skill levels, engagement levels, their study time, and the time to completing the courses. So we can even customize our LMS dashboard to keep track of all these relevant L&D metrics. So with these metrics need to be tailored to the objectives of our training programs, and they should be continuously tracked in the long run.
Yep, absolutely. Makes sense. So why don't we move on to our one of our last and final slides, and we're just talking a little bit about a few enhancements that. So going back, right? So CloudLearn, one of our goals is to ensure that we offer you continuous, sustainable, engaging training, right? And we want to ensure that we as a company are constantly growing and learning, right? That being said, we've had a couple of enhancements to our reporting feature because our clients got back to us. A few of the reports we had were relatively static, they weren't as dynamic. So we've had a couple of enhancements to our reporting functionality. We in fact have a completely overhauled reporting structure, and this can help L&D professionals to translate their learning management data into meaningful, actionable information, right? For devising efficient training strategies, we want to ensure that we veer towards more actionable metrics rather than vanity metrics, right? So this new improvement to the reporting feature allows you to generate user reports, course reports, group reports, and assessment reports. With CloudLearn, you can now use this powerful and intuitive reporting tool to easily access all your important metrics, right? And ensure that you translate this into large changes and improvements to your training programs. So admins can group, filter, summarize these custom reports according to courses, users, learning groups, as well as a whole bunch of other filters. You can also choose to schedule these reports automatically on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to multiple stakeholders, right? So, and this is extremely important because training and development does not happen in silos, right? Training and development, unlike maybe sales or marketing, applies to everybody in the organization. So you want to ensure that all relevant stakeholders receive, continuous updates on the performance of their learners. Now, going back to that sales example, because I started my career in sales, you want to ensure that that the improvement in performance for that particular batch of sales trainees is not just received by, say, their training head, but you want to ensure that their direct manager, right? So that's a sales lead, or even the sales VP, constantly receives updates, right? And only then can you have organization-wide improvement in across your different training and development goals. So our reports help you do this. You can automatically schedule these reports, right, on a weekly, monthly, again, whatever time frame that you want. You can customize these reports and have them sent out, right? And another enhancement, right? Another final enhancement to the reporting feature is our new UI. Our new UI is a lot more clear, right, and intuitive, and very responsive. And you have a whole bunch of filters that you can efficiently track, drag and drop and track, to ensure that your report is customized for the metrics that you're trying to study. Yeah, and apart from that, CloudLearn help. I mean, one of our goals, like I mentioned earlier, is to deliver impactful, engaging enterprise training, right, with a simple as well as powerful learning management system, right? You can create interactive training courses with our powerful course authoring tool. You can also increase learning engagement through gamification and social learning modules. You can, as I mentioned right now, track training progress using pre-built reports. And we also have a very interesting Zoom feature, a Zoom integration that helps you host online webinars and virtual instructor-led training sessions. Again, in today's day and age where remote work is the norm, this feature has had great success with our clients, right? Where you can have your training and development goals easily accessible to your remote workforce, right? And finally, our mobile experience is world class, where you can offer continuous learning experience right from our cloud on mobile app. So I think we have come to an end for today's webinar. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach us at enquiry@cloudlearn.com. That's ENQUIRY at the rate of KLOUDLEARN.com, or simply visit us at cloudlearn.com. That's www.cloudlearn.com. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a great day ahead.